Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're zooming in on a very specific, kind of misunderstood presentation of a condition we've all heard of, ADHD. But specifically, we are talking about the inattentive type. We're going to look way past the standard definitions to uncover some really surprising biological mechanics hiding under the surface, and look at targeted treatments that actually work. So let's dive right in. Okay, kicking things off with Section 1, the Winnie the Pooh type. There is this absolutely endearing metaphor from our source material that perfectly captures this. It says, Winnie the Pooh is just the classic picture of this. He's friendly, nice, he loves people, but he doesn't pay attention very well. His head is up in the clouds. And that really hits the nail on the head. We aren't talking about that classic hyperactive kid bouncing off the walls here. We're talking about someone whose mind is simply wandering somewhere else entirely. Now, in daily life, this translates into some incredibly frustrating hurdles for both the kid and their parents. You know the ones. It's that super short attention span the second a task gets boring. It's the constant daydreaming right in the middle of a conversation, or that daily frantic scavenger hunt for car keys and homework. Honestly, even just the act of getting up in the morning and getting dressed can feel like a monumental task. But here's something absolutely crucial to know. This specific presentation, the quiet, daydreaming, disorganized type, is actually most frequently seen in girls. And because they aren't, causing a loud disruption in the back of the room, their struggles often go completely unnoticed. Or they just get brushed off as a quirky personality trait. But there is profound biology at work here. Which brings us to Section 2, inside the inattentive brain.
When we peek inside the inattentive brain, our focus goes right to the prefrontal cortex and the frontal lobes. In these individuals, this specific front part of the brain is actually neurologically immature for their chronological age. It's chronically under-aroused compared to a typical brain. Think of it kind of like a really sophisticated car engine that's idling way too low. It simply isn't generating the baseline energy it needs to power those basic executive functions.
And this creates a massive paradox when you introduce a mental workload. Like give a typical brain a mental task, say a boring math worksheet, and it naturally perks up, right? It gets to work and starts processing that info. But for the inattentive ADHD brain, no way. Instead of waking up, that front part actually slows down. It gets even more under-aroused. In fact, EEGs literally show these brains producing slow brainwaves that mimic falling asleep. So they aren't just stubbornly choosing to ignore the work. Their brain is literally powering down in response to it. Let's look at Section 3, the classroom challenge. For a brain that's already running low on idle, the standard classroom setting is pretty much the ultimate attention test. Imagine having a brain that powers down when it's bored, and then you're placed in a room with 25 to 30 other super distracting kids, a single teacher lecturing at the front, and a desk full of hard or just flat-out uninteresting tasks. It is incredibly difficult for them to stay tuned in. That environment is practically custom designed to trigger that sleep-like neurological response. All right, moving on to Section 4, how medication actually works. When it comes to stimulant treatments, it's super fascinating to look at the actual biological chain reaction they create to fix this. First, they actively increase blood flow right to that front part of the brain. Next, they boost the production of certain essential neurotransmitters. And ultimately, this chain of events achieves an optimum brain performance state where the person can finally pay attention better and focus longer on those really boring tasks. It's basically like reaching in and turning the dial up on that idling engine so it finally runs at the proper speed.
Which leads perfectly into Section 5, therapy built on skills.
Because, let's be real, medication is only half the battle. You absolutely need behavioral support too. But, and this is a big but, not all therapy is created equal for this condition. Insight therapy, the kind where you sit down and the therapist asks, so how did that make you feel? Actually, that's the wrong approach here. Emotional insight isn't the primary missing ingredient. What these folks desperately need is skills therapy. The right approach focuses entirely on teaching practical, actionable skills for real-world success at school or work. So we're talking highly practical goals here. They need concrete strategies to increase their focus, learn how to solve problems on the fly, and just get organized. We literally need to build a system to stop losing homework. Because think about it, if they spend all evening forcing their brain to do the work, they need the actual mechanical skill of putting that paper in a folder and actually remembering to turn it in the very next day. Those practical skills are exactly what bridges the gap between biological potential and real-world success. So I want to leave you with this to chew on.
Are we treating inattention as a simple behavioral choice, or are we treating it as a real neurological deficit that requires biological help and practical skill building? Because it's a completely different lens, right? When we stop seeing daydreaming and disorganization as just a lack of effort and start seeing a legitimately under-aroused prefrontal cortex, absolutely everything changes. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep discovering, and I'll see you next time.